right, off of our manual resistance hip, in terms of hip flexion, we cause a little bit of trauma. So what we want to do is structurally integrate that into a little bit of an active PNF stretch. So we're going to utilize all the musculature on the posterior portion of the body to try to continue to open that up so we get a little bit more of a quote-unquote functional increase of range of motion, which means the range of motion has been increased with neural integration. So from that position, keep driving that knee up to the sky for me, Carrie. Keep rotating your shoulders to the ground in opposition, opposition. Very good. It should be a good 4 to 6 second reach, a good 4 to 6 second spiral torque, kind of like wringing out a wet towel. So really think about driving this knee up, pointing this knee up to the sky while you rotate those shoulders back down, flat, parallel, prone position. From here, the main job of the spinal stabilizers is really to prevent excessive amount of movement of the spine away from mechanical failure. So from here, we're looking for the ability to laterally flex, but maintaining the opposing musculature. So the movement is just our way to challenge no movement on the opposite side. Very good. Standard Spider-Man position. Now from here, now really protect this line. Don't even think about coming up. Stay in that Silver Surfer position until you get into a good streamline. Now from there, we want to lever you up to try to make your hip flexors and your quads significantly more responsive to that stretch. Still utilizing a good compensatory action reflex in terms of our ability to maintain a stable pelvic girdle platform while we roll that spine up on a vertical axis. So from this position, we want to go ahead and gently keep the hips right where they are. Don't move that, and then roll up into a tall, pretty posture. Good streamlined vertical, and then incorporate into 2 big, powerful jumps. The role that the iliopsoas plays in spinal stabilization. So from here, we're looking for a responsive, and when we talk about responsive, we're looking for responsive in terms of eccentric ability. Can we keep that iliopsoas lengthened as we produce power through a straight elongated hip? One of the common tendencies is to flex the spine excessively and to force the iliopsoas, the hip flexors, to flex the spine, thus creating a high amount of instability. So we want to work on the athlete's ability to lengthen the back quad, back hip flexor line during movement, especially the downward phase. So anytime that the athlete is elongating that line, can we keep the spine straight and stable versus allowing the hip flexor line to crumple the hip and to crumple the posture? So stretch and land, stretch and land. Now the goal is not necessarily to jump with rotation. The goal is to control landing of that rotational torque. So you really want to go ahead and put that tension right on your glutes, right on your high hamstring, with an attempt that we're going to control an over rotation of the feet, of the knees, of the ankles. Big draw, down, up, go right. Beautiful. Down, up, go left. Beautiful, nice job. Very good. And we're gonna do it all over again. The only difference on this one is we're gonna try the harder of the two, which is gonna be your outside rotation. So we're gonna spin to the outside of the lead leg. Spin to the outsides of your lead legs. Good vertical shin. Now establish the tallest, prettiest posture. Always come back to your basics, always come back to your fundamentals. Lever yourself up to a tall, pretty posture, coming right to me. Now, no over rotation, no over rotation. And instead, we're gonna add a little bit of lateral flexion into that one. And let's try that again. Take 4. Next progression. Stiffen up your upper lip, Mockingbird. Back. Now from there, he's gonna fight from there, really try to keep Ronnie from pushing him back. But remember, the top of the head needs to stay up tall and pretty. Push back now. Switch feet, same arm. Go ahead and stand up, switch feet, same arm. Very good. Now the same exact sequence, we're still gonna concentrate on pushing with that right shoulder blade, keep back slapping him, keep back slapping him. It's that motion, beautiful job. And then recover it, and then we go through that on the other side of the body. So from the left hand, both feet, right hand, both feet, but go through that twice. It's a small volume because we want you guys to concentrate on that. Now, if you're okay with it, I want you guys that are applying the manual resistance to start working your hand off of them, because they need to be able to stabilize their spine on their own versus you bracing them. Challenge your ability to demonstrate good posture by affecting the shoulder girdle stabilization program, which means we want to try to protect that retracted position. So we go tall, pretty posture, big broad chest, make sure we don't excessively elevate that shoulder, and then we're going to go ahead and fight from there. We're going to hold that right line, fight from both feet, left line, fight from both feet, and we're going to do that cycle twice. Really trying to concentrate on maintaining a tall, pretty posture. Tall, pretty posture, balance that glass of water on the top of the head.
Ref, what is your take on the kipping pull-ups compared to our strict pull-ups?
Well, one of the things that we like to do is, number one, clarify that we're not against a kip. I think a kip is a fantastic tool if you have to actually get up on top of something. It is a usable skill. Anytime that you have to climb a ladder, climb a rope, climb anything like that, anything that utilizes that very powerful, very dynamic quadruple extension or violent hip extension that a lot of people like to utilize. With that being said, anytime that we have our athletes kip, if there's a couple of things that they are taking care of prior to, we allow them to kip with the idea that they're always going to end in a tall, pretty posture. So regardless of what technique they try to do to get up on top of something, we still want them to maintain a very strong adherence to posture. Now, for us, we actually don't call them pull-ups, we actually just call them pulls. In our system, every type of pull, whether it's horizontal or vertical or any combination of, is a postural development exercise, which means we're really looking at the shoulder girdle and the development of the shoulder girdle, thus contributing to better posture, thus increasing better performance. So when we look at any type of pull, we're looking for an athlete and their ability to retract their shoulder blades, anterior, move away from an excessive amount of anterior tilt, and move into scapular depression. Now, a couple of things that we found is somebody who is deficient in any of those will really suffer, predispose themselves to a lot of shoulder problems. So we had to take a look and work and reverse engineer that to sit there and say, how can we develop somebody's ability to stay out of those mechanical failure lines? One of the things that we found is with a kipping pull-up becomes very effective as a gymnastics move because it technically takes out the bottom portion of a pull. And one of the things that we found is that's really the most important portion of it. Scapular depression and athletes' ability to balance out a lot of trap development, upper trap development, really relies on your ability to depress your shoulder blades and not excessively elevate them, which would be one of the trifecta of causing severe shoulder injuries. So one of the things that we always like to do off of our scapular depression is from a dead hang, really going from a relaxed elbow and just reverse shrugging. Really think about sinking into your shoulder girdle, top of the head up, extending that neck. Relaxed hips, driving that up, extension through. Now, with a true kipping pull-up, a reason why kipping pull-ups are so effective, and we understand that balancing out positive outcomes with allowing an athlete to accomplish something versus not giving them the tools to be able to protect their shoulders, not giving them the tools to be able to develop better posture, thus decreasing performance. So a kip is effective because the very violent extension of swinging that pendulum through and popping up lifts your center mass. It's the exact same thing as a Fosbury flop of getting an athlete to rise a center mass, thus allowing you to be momentarily weightless and allowing you to kind of pull from a weightless position versus bearing all of your weight as such. So when you're here, of allowing this to kip up, kip up, kip up. Now, a couple problems with that is number one is we're taking away the scapular depression portion of the bottom, as well as one of the things that we always see is the natural tendency is to roll over top and thus not relying on the shoulder kinematics to pull yourself up, of being here and staying in the scapular plane. It's almost impossible thing to do is to kip back, and once you're in this position of launching your center mass vertical, and then even though people feel like they have a pinch, they don't have a depression. And for us, depression is just as important as that retraction in of itself. So one of the things that we always tell our athletes to do is, from a basic pull standpoint, is start from a dead hang, and the most important part of a pull is that scapular depression, and then trying to work that up into a tall, pretty posture. No matter how high they get, no matter how low they end up going, the goal is to always work into a taller, prettier posture. Oftentimes, if the athlete kips and they come up over top, the head of the humerus will start to poke forward, and thus an excessive anterior rotation of that shoulder girdle, of that shoulder blade pitching forward, and thus the head of the humerus slowly starting to work out of its socket, coupled with an excessive amount of elevation, which now at this point in time the shoulder girdle, the head of the humerus starts to roll up out of the shoulder girdle, and now you start really approaching that trifecta of causing any type of labral tears or excessive amount of mechanical stress to that rotator.